Hello and welcome to episode 156 of The Pitcher or the Hitter, the podcast by the M-SABR Dynasty League for the M-SABR Dynasty League. I am Cam.
And I'm Sahil.
And Paul Skeens has made his much-awaited Major League debut this past Saturday. Pitched pretty well, but Anthony did not need him in his lineup to beat you for the second time this year.
Yeah, you had briefly just mentioned Skeens and it was kind of like, hey, Anthony made the right decision. You said that right beforehand, thinking how like he wasn't going to get a quality start, and he didn't end up getting a quality start. In fact, I think it would have hurt him ERA and whip wise. But yeah, huge win for Anthony. But before we get into the matchups, there is one thing I'd like to discuss that I think is more important any matchup that happened this week. I think it is by far the biggest win that happened this week. And that is that Jarred Kelenic is no longer on your roster.
Yeah, Jarred Kelenic hit a home run on Ruthvik's bench on Sunday, which would have um, not really done much. It might have made RBI a little bit closer in his matchup. But yeah, Jarred Kelenic. Oh no, he did get him in the lineup. Okay.
He did have him in the lineup his first day on his team where he had a home run. He took him out of the lineup today because he had the matchup locked up.
I'm
And
seeing right here he's in his lineup unless ESPN's wrong.
ESPN's wrong about that. You should refresh it, and I think it'll work.
Um,
Yeah.
oh, weird. Yeah, it's I don't know for whatever. Maybe his stats are counting for him this week, or maybe he didn't get him out of lineup fast enough. I don't know. I'm looking at the box score and it. Oh, nope, there it goes. Never mind.
Yeah.
Um, weird. Yeah, ESPN's just weird.
Oh, hold on.
Oh,
Brandon Nimmo walk-off home run. Does that flip ERA?
oh my
Oh my
goodness.
God, it flipped ERA!
Oh my God. Andrew just lost live on air to Yuki.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
Wow. Yuki.
We love Brandon Nimmo in this house. Wow, we had I am glad I pushed us to start to do this live.
Yeah.
We almost we almost waited till this game ended. AJ Minter, yeah, Andrew left him in the lineup and that cost him ERA
He
and
didn't need to have Minter in there either. He should have just taken him out. It would have been safe. Um, Also, I mentioned this in the chat like an hour ago. I said also, can we give the Yuki can still win scenario some credence? Minter blows up, hands ERA to Yuki.
oh
Like,
my God.
my goodness, this is awesome. Uh, oh my God. Wow. It's so in lately we've been recording after the matchups have ended, and even now we got on about half hour later than we had initially planned. And to Cam's credit, Cam, as soon as we got on the call, was like, "Hey, you want to just start recording, just see if we can catch like a matchup kind of flipping live on air?" And damn,
Oh, and I will take that because that puts me in second instead of third after this week. So we do love to see that.
yeah,
Um,
that means Andrew, after starting 4-0, has lost three straight. I wow.
yeah,
Just
we yeah, tough tough stretch for Andrew's team. I mean, back-to-back losses to he has not played a bad team all season until this one, and he loses to Yuki right here. It's been a tough schedule for him to start the year, and this was his break, and couldn't get this one done. That's got to sting.
no, and the schedule's brutal next 3 weeks too. He gets Ruthvik, then you, and then Erik. And then he gets Alex and Zach, but then he gets Jake after that. The second half of the schedule is an absolute cupcake, but yeah, this front half is brutal. For him to be 4-3 right now, despite that, is still pretty solid. But man, I mean, there's a big difference between 4-3 and 5-2.
No,
Um,
absolutely.
Uh,
Um,
like,
wow. Wow, wow, wow.
wow. That's a whew. Um, Jarred Kelenic though.
Jarred
You,
Kelenic.
yeah, let's finish up on that, and then I want to talk about this Andrew Yuki matchup first, right after that. Yeah, you traded him. So I've been telling you forever you have to cut Jarred Kelenic. There's so many reasons why, like it's just not going to work out, and you finally did. But what I think is
I
even
did not cut Jarred
funnier,
Kelenic.
well,
Let the
let me
record
finish.
show.
Let me finish. What I think is even funnier than you, instead of cutting him, you traded him for Jameson Tyone. And then like 10 minutes later, you're like, F this, I can't trade Jameson Tyone. I'm going to cut Tyone. So rather than just flat out cutting Kelenic, you traded him for essentially nothing. And I think that's a funnier end to his stint on your team than him actually getting cut. Do you want to talk a little bit about why you got rid of Kelenic?
The writing kind of seemed to be on the wall. I was getting a lot of pitchers back. Walker Bueller just came back, and uh, it just kind of, you know, really felt like time. Uh, I realized I had the realization that he'd only been in my lineup 3 days out of 6 matchups. He had been in my lineup 3 days, and he had not been in my lineup since week 3. So I kind of realized, what am I doing here? He's struggling. He has a 616 OPS. Ruthvik expressed interest in him. I've got to get Jackson Merrill up here soon. Um, I've Paul Sewald came back. That was kind of the other part of it. Um, I might want to call up Joey Loperfido soon. He he's been hitting all right. So a lot of those things kind of circled at the same time. Ruthvik said he would trade for him. We kind of discussed a few names. Um, I there were a few guys. He was like, "Hey, you can have anyone off my IL," and I was like, "Yes, I will take anyone off your IL." And then Ruthvik kind of balked at that. He said, "Actually, the only person I would give you is Tyone," and I had no leverage at this point. I kind of tried to workshop some 3-team deals with Yuki to get one of Ruthvik's guys. That kind of fell through. And in the end, I realized, I got to move on from Kelnick. I got to accept what I can accept.
There you go. Yeah, I think you're right. The writing was on the wall. I think it was time. He's playing he's strong side platoon, batting at the bottom of the lineup, and just the strikeout rate's still high. I think he will be a fine, you know, I think he could have like a 10-year career doing what he's doing, but it's never going to be fantasy relevant. And it's unfortunate, but yeah, it's you made the right choice.
I'm
It's
sure he'll have some hot streaks where he ends up at the back of my bench again. But yeah, uh, filling in for injury, but yeah, as a long-term guy, I think that's sadly over.
Yeah, and that's kind of the game you play with prospects sometimes. Um, they could be top prospects and still be productive major leaguers, but not really be what you hope they could be.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. And looking at that 2019 prospect draft, I see that your clicker is already on it. There is just one yellow square left, and it's Alec Thomas on Anthony's team.
Yeah, third round pick, 32nd overall. Would not have guessed that. There are two green squares though, including you owning Yusei Kikuchi, who was your 13th overall pick in that draft. One pick ahead of Kyler Murray. So
Well, yeah, glad I was able to get Kikuchi there. 2 picks ahead of Jonathan India and 1 pick after Jarred Kelenic.
yeah, there you go. I still can't believe the era is over. Yeah. One other trade, and we'll move on here. This one's really minor. I have basically no thoughts. EVO traded Brian Rocchio to Daniel and Matt for a 2029 third or 2026 third. and we're or sorry, 2029 third. I can't read. Just the 2029 third. Any thoughts?
No, I owned Rocchio in my on my farm system for a long time, but I traded him for Sonny Gray before I had to call him up. So that's kind of a guy that I did trade early and was happy that I traded.
Yeah, I think that one worked out pretty well for you. Can't argue with those results. I think 2029 third is nothing for Daniel and Matt to gamble on someone and maybe they catch lightning in a bottle. Then Lord knows they need it, and EVO didn't have any room. So yeah, I think that's fair. Um, let's move on to the matchups here. And I mean, I think we have to talk about Yuki and Andrew first, right? I mean, that's
I think we have to. Yeah, Andrew, this was about to be a 5-5-2 tie, but ERA went to Yuki and it's a 6-4-2 money ball win. They led a lot of the week, but trailed for a good chunk of Sunday and managed to pull it out. Yuki used all 8 of his ads and put together not a great week, but a uh, good enough week. Hit 23 doubles as Yuki likes to do, and pulled out the win.
yeah, this was a relatively big hitting week for Yuki. The pitching was average. It got the job done. 63 Ks, 4 quality starts, 4.23 ERA. I mean, he won ERA by .06. I mean, to put it in perspective here, if Brandon Nimmo, instead of hitting a walk-off home run there, if he would have just, I don't know, hit a RBI single to tie the game, and then Minter gets taken out immediately, and Nimmo doesn't score, game goes into extras. Andrew and Yuki tie. I mean, he literally needed every last point of ERA there to get it, and he got it there. Like you said on the hitting side, it was pretty close in most of these categories, but Yuki came on top in every category but saves, which they tied. So, or steals, sorry. Um, really tough loss for Andrew. He drops to 4-3, and for Yuki, he keeps himself relevant. He is now 3-4. And how about this? We are now 7 weeks through the season, and he is a half game behind Jake. Who would have thought that?
Yeah, who would have thought that? Yuki's kind of squarely finding himself in that just below the playoffs tier of teams that we were a little bit expecting him to be, but maybe be slightly worse than that. Yeah, you kind of nailed it. Not the best pitching week, but good enough to get it done and not have a slightly worse ERA. Joel Payamps got blown up for him, but great start from Jake Irvin. Great start from Taj Bradley. I didn't know he was healthy. Good start from Zach Eflin. On the hitting, yeah, on the hitting side, um, I mean, his matchup MVP has got to be Max Kepler, who hit 6 doubles this week. It's no Alec Boehm hitting 8 doubles in a week, but 6 doubles for Max Kepler, 6 runs, 5 ribbies. With a shout out to Randy, who had a good week. Johnny DeLuca had a good week. Corbin Carroll drove in 7 runs with a bat on base. Um, Bryce Harper drove in 8. Actually, I think I'm going to give it to Harper over Kepler. I think he was better in more categories. He got a steal also, which ended up tying that category. But great week for Max Kepler, regardless, and great week for Yuki's team.
Yeah, Max Kepler's been a nice streamer for him. He actually offered me Kepler in a trade, which I turned down because my team's been getting healthier. But yeah, congrats to Yuki. Certainly, I'm bummed for his sake that he lost to Conor a couple of weeks ago in a matchup, Yuki could have easily won. Um, because then he'd be sitting at 4-3 right now with matchups against Alex and Zach and Daniel and Matt the next 2 weeks. I mean, he is 3-4. I mean, if he wins these next 2 weeks, he's sitting at 5-4 with a matchup against Anthony coming up after that. I mean, that could be, yeah, schedule gets harder after that, but Yuki can maybe stick around for a little bit. And I certainly hope so. The league's more fun when Yuki is kind of hanging around here. So, um,
I agree.
yeah. But speaking of Anthony,
Real quick, Bryce Harper, your stat about first round picks who have not won matchup MVP is now at a date because Bryce Harper just got his first. So congrats to Bryce
Ooh,
Harper.
okay, wow. I did not yeah, I completely forgot that that was a stat. So that's damn good for Bryce. Um, I am surprised it's taken him that long. Sure doesn't help that Yuki's team hasn't done that much winning over the years comparatively, and wonder if that's kind of hurt him. But anyways, let's move on.
Let's move on. Yeah, the battle for first has been very decisively handed down.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about this matchup. First off, I mean, shout out to Anthony. 5-1-1 now on the season. He has 2 wins over me. He has a tie to Erik, and he's got a loss to Andrew, and he's beaten a couple of teams that he should be beating. But that's on 2-1-1 against like legitimate playoff teams here. Um, including a dominant win over me this week. I mean, he beat me 10-2. We were talking off air right before this. I don't know how many times that I have lost double-digit categories. Like, I'm pretty sure you can count it on one hand. Like, this has to be like one of the most devastating like losses that I've suffered in a long time. Um, I meant to check it before we started recording, and I'll see if I could do it quickly when you were talking about the matchup. But it, this week just um did not go in my favor. Anthony had an amazing pitching week. He had 8 quality starts out of 11, 3 saves, 5 holds, a 2.93 ERA, and a 108 whip. And really, the only bad start he had this week was Christian Javier getting blown up for 7 earned runs in an inning and a third. Otherwise, I mean, his ERA and whip probably would have been sub 2 and sub 1, respectively. Like, I mean, just, and that was the only thing that kind of made it competitive looking going into Sunday. Offensively, great week for him. 14 homers, 51 ribbies, 10 steals, 20 doubles, 46 runs with 337 OBP. I mean, just dominant all around. Every time it looked like, hey, maybe I could get back into this category or that category, like I looked up and he just hit like 3 more doubles or 2 more home runs. And I mean, I look at the week I had, decent enough pitching week, 84 Ks, 5 quality starts, 5 saves, 3 holds, a 3.55 ERA, 112 whip. Like, not terrible. Offensively, kind of short against him in every category. Anthony won every offensive category, but I would have beaten EBO and Erik and Jake and Ruthvik and Andrew this week. I think actually I would have beaten just about everybody but you. And obviously Anthony. So not as bad as that week where I beat Erik and he literally would like just like I mean he just went balls to the wall that week. But yeah, I mean this kind of feels like a tough luck loss to some degree for me. But at the same time, right? I mean, legitimate team for by Anthony, and this was not him just like getting a lucky win or anything. I mean, he steamrolled me. And his team, I mean, I know Trout's out and he's going to be out for a while, but I look at some of the pieces on this team. I'm like, shit, like, it's a pretty good team. Just some of the pieces Anthony's been able to acquire, and it's been kind of quiet how he's gotten some of these guys. I mean, Glaber kind of came in an early season trade for him last year. Spencer Steer came in that trade for Tanner Bybee. Like Willie Adames came in that Bogart steal. He's been really good. Christopher Morel was a free agent pickup. Starling Marte was a cheap trade. Davis Schneider was a cheap trade. He might have been the same trade as Marte, actually. Ryan Jeffers has been an awesome free agent pickup for him after Sean Murphy got hurt on opening day. I mean, that's like a kind of almost a blessing in disguise. Murphy got hurt. Bailey Ober's great. He got him in a trade. Bryce Miller was a trade acquisition. Freddie Peralta, he got in a trade with Jake. He's been great. Brandon Pfaadt, he got in a trade with Ruthvik. Like, has Anthony just kind of been the silent killer this whole time? Just like making all these awesome moves and all of a sudden it's like shit, like he's just breaking out. Like a lot of these are young players too. I mean, this is not like cupcake or not cupcake, sorry. This is not like older guys that he's just acquiring and kind of just hoping they're hot. Like this is a lot of solid young pieces. Um, like shit. It's a good team.
Yeah, no, he's been really good at working the margins. Yeah, just getting good guys to kind of fill in. I was maybe a year early when I declared his team as having the best young rotation in the league. But yeah, he's got you look at it now, he's got some guys there for sure. Um, Bailey Ober is going to be matchup MVP with his especially his great start on Sunday, 10 Ks, one hit and six in the third. But a pretty solid start on earlier in the week too. Yeah, Reese Olson was just kind of a flyer he took this past off season, and he's been tremendous. Yeah, there's not really much more to say. He's been a John Schreiber subscriber, and he got a big save and hold for him this week. Yeah, Team Resnick, 5-1-1, first place, sole possession.
Yeah, sole possession. He won the season series against me. I mean, that is good for him. I will say I was happy for my team. This is by far the healthiest I've been in a while. I got Suzuki and Yelich and Braxton Garrett back from the IL. Um, so I'm feeling more optimistic about my team based off of that. But yeah, this was a tough pill to swallow. I was really hoping to kind of move the sole possession to first place with a couple tough matchups coming up against you and Zane. On the flip side for Anthony, if you look at his schedule coming up here, it's really favorable. He plays Daniel and Matt and then Ruthvik and then Yuki the next 3 weeks. I think I'd pick him to win all three of those matchups right now, even the one against Ruthvik. That'll put him at 8-1-1 through the first almost half of the season before he plays a Jake. Like, I think he's for real. I think he's for real.
I think, yeah, with those two wins over you, he's kind of through the hard part of his schedule, and yeah, I would put him as a favorite for the playoffs.
I think I would too. I'm really curious to see if he augments this team. And it's funny because it was not that long ago, early in the offseason, I was literally saying, I wonder at what point does he kind of trade Trout? Because maybe he's not going to be competitive and maybe get something before Trout's body completely falls apart. But yeah, I'm changing my tune here. I mean, shout out Anthony. But uh yeah, anything else you'd like to talk about this matchup?
Not really, no, other than I like what I saw from your team going into this coming week
Like in a positive way, or you
in
liked it
a
because
in a
you get to
in
play.
terms of them getting to play my team kind of way. We're starting out to get a little toxic a little early here.
Oh God, yeah. I've already congratulated you on your win, as have you to me, basically. Um,
Um,
I think you already declared I was going to beat you 7-5, but
that's kind of how it always goes. I always um, lose my big matchups early in the year, and do better late in the year. 3 years in a row, I've lost to Erik in our first matchup and beaten him in our second matchup. So that's just kind of, uh, early season. Uh, anyway, we're not talking about my team. Why don't we talk about the other shocking uh, blowout win? And that was EBO putting on a clinic against Jake, and Jake's team. You know, this was not a good showing.
yeah, I think we're due for a larger conversation about Jake's team here in a minute. But I want to talk about EBO first. I mean, 18 homers, 42 ribbies, 21 doubles. The 311 OBP is a little low, but I mean, they dominated offensively otherwise. And then pitching side, 6 quality starts out of 8. That's a nice number there. 4 saves, 3 holds, a solid, not the best ERA whip, but a 121 whip was enough to win. 4.10 ERA just narrowly lost that category. I mean, they won 8-3-1. And there was no point this week, I feel like, where I really looked at it and I was like, oh, hey, Jake's team's about to turn the corner. He's going to take the lead. Or even that, oh, hey, Jake's team has the lead. Um, EVO was in control this entire time. They moved to 5-2. I mean, they've been playing really well with a young team that, I thought maybe could be it had the potential to be inconsistent at times, but um, they've kind of rolled. And this is, 2 out of 3 weeks now where they've played a playoff team from last year. And they've won pretty handedly. I mean, they beat Ruthvik 10-1 a couple weeks ago. Nearly 12-0'd them. I know they have a back-to-back losses week 2 and week 3 against you and Andrew, but I mean, you can't deny the results recently. It is a tough stretch here still. Um, Still 6 of their next 7. And I think this will tell a lot. Erik, me, you, then Yuki, Anthony, Erik, and then Jake, before their schedule lightens up a bit. So they're very much starting the difficult part of their schedule here, but I mean, you have to like the early results.
You really do. Yeah, my win against them is looking better and better every week. They're improving to 5-2, tied for second, but losing it on the tiebreaker. Um, yeah, great hitting week, decent enough pitching week, despite blowups from Maeda and Simeon Woods Richardson. But outside of that, they get a good start from Gore, good start from even Naga, good start from Rodon, who you know, we bashed that trade, but he's been a very, very fine starting pitcher for them. Um, uh, Looking at the hitting side, a good week for Kerry Bonds, uh, good week for Connor Joe, um, decent week for Bellinger. Matchup MVP is going to a guy um, who much like Bryce Harper, has shockingly never received a matchup MVP before. And this is a guy who was on Jake's team last year. Kyle Tucker, matchup MVP, hit 4 home runs, stole a base, drove in 5 runs, scored 5 runs. Great week for him, which could have been on Jake's team, although that still wouldn't have flipped this matchup.
Yeah, I think Kyle Tucker has tied for the league lead in home runs. I mean, he is. I think he's always been an underrated superstar, and he's really proving it. Why Ruthvik traded Kyle Tucker to EVO, I'll never get. But Jake's team here now. This is back-to-back weeks he's lost. I don't think he played particularly well in either week, despite the fact that they were tough opponents. He lost to me last week. He lost to EVO this week. He is 3-3-1, which puts him out of the playoffs, and the playoffs started today. There are 7 teams who are ahead of him in the standings. And with the exception of a win over you, the only team he has beat is Daniel and Matt twice. I know we talked about them a couple weeks ago, being like, they're gonna bounce back, whatever, not really concerned. You still feel that way, or has the level of concern and urgency kind of gone up a bit?
It's definitely ramping up, and it doesn't help when he's having rough weeks from Manny Machado and Evan Carter uh, and George Springer, guys who were supposed to be his regular guys. And Acuna, not a great week for him, and he's been good to start this season, but he's slugging 357, and he's certainly been worse than Kyle Tucker has. Um,
I'm worried that knee's bothering him.
yeah, it seems like it might be. And then Jake, that depth has been tested, and now he's rostering guys like Will Benson who have not been good. And uh, he's got Jack Sawinski in that lineup who um, has been on and off his roster all year, has not been having a good season at all. And and then the pitching staff, of course, that's not all that trade's fault. He's um, really been decimated by injuries. Um, but yeah, just having to throw guys like Ben Lively out there um, and yeah, Andrew Heaney uh, not pitching the best, and it's yeah, just very much kind of it's not the way he would like to be uh, using his pitching staff, obviously, and the results have not been great. I don't know one way or the other. Like I'm sure Machado's going to be better than this. Um, but I'm not sure George Springer is. So it's tough to see where the balance is.
I agree. I do think there's some of these players that are going to get a bit better, and I'm not, particularly worried about some of them. I think Corey Seager is going to get it going eventually. I think he's getting it going a little bit as is. I think Acuna is inevitably going to get it together. Although I don't think he's going to be as good as he was last year. But yeah, I mean, Blake Snell's on his way back. That should help him. But I'm a little curious too. He's rostering a couple of guys right now who I don't really know if they need to be stashed in his IL. I wonder if maybe he could open up some roster spots that way. But yeah, I'm starting to get a bit concerned, and I think a lot of it is just kind of somebody attrition. And I think you saw in his matchup against me, right? I made a comment in the chat where I was like, I think he managed that week about as perfectly as he could have. Um, Really nice managing job by him, but he still lost. And I think you kind of see what happened this week where some of these streamers really just didn't pay off at all. Um, and it looks a lot uglier, right? So I think he has to basically manage things perfectly to get some wins against tougher teams. And unfortunately, it's not happening right now in conjunction with the injuries. Luckily for him, he gets Conor next week, Alex and Zach the week after that, and then the schedule gets tough again. So maybe next 2 weeks, he's got more margin for error. He gets healthier. He plays Ruthvik right after that 2 week stretch. Maybe he's sitting there at 5-3-1, and his team looks a lot healthier and things are better. Maybe some of these bats have started to heat up, but it's tough. Um, I wonder if he needs to make a trade sooner rather than later. I think he's been kind of resisting it, but I think he needs to make one.
Yeah, no, and I think you're right looking at the IL, like I think having an extra spot would be better than I guess stashing Matt Brash or maybe Lance McCullers too. Um, but but then again, looking at who he's been rostering, is that spot going to be, is there someone who's going to be good and worth using in that spot unless he say wants to be streaming holds?
Well,
Um,
yeah, why not? Why not stream holds? Why not stream a hitter that you find interesting in free agency and maybe keep him for a couple days, see if he could become something like if you would have streamed hold if you just say holds and if you would have streamed holds this week, he would have won holds. And I mean he's still at a loss, but those little things at the margins can make a difference, especially when you're playing these better teams and we're all playing really close matchups for the most part.
yeah, no, we certainly are. Um, Speaking of close matchups, though, let's talk about how Ruthvik very nearly lost to the Drury. A 7-5 victory that really came down to the final day.
Yeah, I mean literally the final like at bats here. So it was kind of ugly. He won 7-5, but it wasn't a good. He had a big pitching blow up at the beginning of the week, and that really kind of did him in. Like Trevor Rogers wasn't good, Jose Barrios wasn't good. Like it was just bad pitching all around. And that's when I first was kind of like, hey, Daniel had a pretty big lead through the first half of the week. And then Ruthvik kind of clawed his way back. He actually finished with 6 quality starts despite an ugly 5.40 ERA. So he did have some nice starts kind of there to kind of end a week. But Daniel and Matt still hung around despite Ruthvik clawing back. And at different points today, I mean, literally like there was points where if Daniel and Matt got like one hit or like hit by pitch, walk by one of their hitters, like they literally would have flipped OBP. As it stands, they lost OBP by 0.02. And that prevented them from tying, but also they're only down 2 in runs, 2 in doubles, 2 in home runs. Um, I mean, like, I not like Ruthvik got away with one, but kind of got away with one. Like, this is one of those where you kind of take a breath of relief, and you're like, whew, and then just are just like, all right, like I'm gonna move on to next week and just forget this existed. But I mean, man, Daniel and Matt came that close to getting their first win of the year. Ruthvik advances to 4-2-1, but man, oh man, was that close.
Yeah, Ruthvik really did pick a good week to have a bad week. Yeah, pitching wise, you mentioned the blow up uh from Rogers. But yeah, 5.4 ERA just on the whole was not good. James MacArthur got blown up out of the pen, although he did get 2 saves. Lucas Urseg, he streamed to try and or he'd been rostering for a little bit to get some holds. He gave up 3 runs in an inning. Keaton Wynn has made 2 really bad starts in a row now. Although to be fair, this one was at Coors Field. Not the best start for Savali, not the best start for Pavetta. Jose Barrios got blown up. So just a bad pitching week. Hitting wise wasn't that much better either. Andres Jimenez was bad. Um, Bo Bichette, not great. Gilbert Ruiz, not great. Churio, I mean, if you look to Jackson Churio's numbers, he is not having a good start to the season. I'm sure he'll be fine, but it's been rough out there, and um, he has got 260 on base percentage. Taking the positives though, decent enough week for Devers, good week for Horner, fine week for Michael Garcia. Matchup MVP will go to Jeremy Pena, I suppose, because he had a 571 on base. Um, Even though he had just the 2 extra base hits, he got a steal. He got a few runs here for him, which put him just barely over the edge.
Yeah, he needed every last point of that OBP. Yeah, I have a hard time figuring out what to think of this team here, Ruthvik's team. Um, he has a week 1 win over Erik, right? And he tied Jake. Um, but like he's got a loss to Alex. Last 2 weeks against Yuki and Daniel and Matter, both 7-5 wins that looked like at different points like he couldn't lose. He hasn't won more than 7 categories in a single week, despite wins over Conor, Yuki, and Daniel and Matt. I don't know. It's like I feel like he's kind of in that group with EBO and Anthony, right? Kind of in that tier, just not necessarily by record, but in terms of kind of where we might had them ranked going into the season and where I probably have them ranked right now, roughly. Um, and they've looked a lot more impressive than his team has, despite Ruthvik's team being the one coming off the playoff appearance. And I don't know what to make of it, but I mean, it's a brutal stretch he's got coming up here. Andrew, then Anthony, then he plays Jake, then he plays me. So that's a rough 4 week stretch here, and I think that's gonna kind of determine a lot about his team here, you know. If he goes 2-2 in that stretch, or maybe 1-3, maybe he's kind of in a little bit of trouble, and maybe he might be in the outside looking in at the end of the season. But um, I don't know if this team's inspiring a lot of confidence in me right now. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I agree. It's they're 4-2-1. They're winning games that they're supposed to be winning, but it really hasn't been the most convincing. And it's gonna be uh yeah, going to be interesting to see the next few weeks. Very, very telling matchup against Andrew next week. Um, yeah, I guess the toxic undercard to toxic week. Because that'll be a very interesting one to watch.
The toxic undercard, the toxic week. I like that. The phrasing. That was good. Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. Anything else you'd like to kind of add here, or do we want to move on to the next matchup here?
No, let's move on here. Two matchups left. Let's talk about my team. You know, it's the easy part of my schedule, but I'm cruising right now, moving to 5-2, getting into a much more difficult part of my schedule. And it feels like I've been improving every week. An 8-4 win followed by a 9-3 win followed by a 10-2 win. Um, Whereas, last year it kind of felt like, I'd eke out a 7-5 win against Conor or I'd tie Alex and Zach in a stupid way. And it feels like I'm doing, you're doing better than that this year. I'm not only winning the matchups I'm supposed to be winning, but I'm looking good doing it.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is the best your team's looked in quite some time, or especially over this past month. I mean, yeah, like you said, easy part of your schedule, but to use Ruthvik as a comparison here, right? He eked out two 7-5 wins against the Bellies and Yuki, whereas you played both of those teams and you looked a lot more dominant in your wins. Um, and I think it's just as much about how you beat someone and not just the fact that you're beating them. If you're dominant most weeks, more often than not, you're going to be winning these matchups. And I think that's the difference there. And you bounced back after a 1-2 start. I mean, big loss to Andrew week one. You lost to Jake week three. But I mean, you look good since then. I mean, you just said it, schedule gets tough, but I think you've set yourself up nicely, and I'm certainly not looking forward to playing you next week.
No, and looking at my team here, I think it's first most important to mention what I did with my pitching this week. And you wouldn't look at it by how my ERA and WHIP finished, but I at one point thought I could make a run at the record. Um, I had a great Monday, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna beat Conor anyway. Why don't I do it? Why don't I go for it? Um, and uh, and then Tanner Houck pitched, and he got a quality start, but it was a 7-inning, 3 earned run quality start, and that kind of put me over the limit. After benching, I benched 3 quality starts on either Tuesday or Wednesday, so I'd have like 75 Ks and 8 quality starts if I had started all my guys and not tried to go for some dumb record. Um, but you know, that's how it goes sometimes. Um, I guess yeah, I didn't get the style points of having the 8 quality starts, but either way, my hitting looked great. 254 runs. Wish the OBP was a little bit higher, but that's okay. And all in all, very comfortable win. Good week for Yandy Diaz. Good week for um, looking down my lineup. Vlad Jr., who had a 545 on base percentage and stole a base this week. Uh, Good week for Rizzo. Um, Matchup MVP will go to Aaron Judge, who drove in 7 runs, 481 on base percentage, hit 3 homers. He is back in a big way, um, which we love to see. Pitching wise, we'd mentioned that Tanner Houck start. Yu Darvish looked fantastic this week. 12 shutout innings, including 7 shutout innings on Sunday. He's been great. Hector Neris has been a little bit shaky, but he's had that closers roll down. Mitch Keller looking really good lately. Um, so yeah, that's kind of been my team. Paul Blackburn got blown up and he's off my roster. But you know, overall, not much to say. I guess a couple quick notes. Jackson Merrill's on my roster for good because he's over the at bat limit, and he went 3 for 4 in his first with 2 stolen bases too. So happy to have that. Yeah, and the last thing I guess I want to mention is my catcher situation. Wilson Contreras broke his arm. Um, that is a big blow. He is ahead of Adley Rutschman in the player rater currently. So that's a big blow. I rostered Connor Wong for a couple days, and then I picked up Patrick Bailey, but Patrick Bailey missed today's game with food poisoning, so hopefully he's okay. In his what would have been his second game off the concussion IL. I like Patrick Bailey, and I think he'll probably be a good replacement for Wilson Contreras. If not, then I can kind of stream catcher. It's a fairly easy position to stream. But yeah, other than that, my team looks really solid.
Yeah, no, you're definitely chugging along here. Yeah, I got nothing else to add to that. Anything else we'd like to say about this matchup? Are there any other matchups we haven't talked about?
Um, well, there's one more matchup. I just want to talk about Connor's team. Another rough on base percentage week this week. He was better than last week, but only slightly at a 267 OBP. Uh, yeah, it was a decent week for a couple guys. Like Reese Hoskins really was all of Connor's offense this week, with maybe a little bit of Sal Perez in there too. Um, but and the pitching was okay. The bullpen looked pretty solid. Michael Kopech got 2 saves for the White Sox. Um, and he had Kyle Gibson made one good start and one slightly less good start. But yeah, overall, not really a lot to be happy about. And Connor drops to 1-6.
Yeah, I mean, this team's obviously rebuilding. Um, yeah, I mean, a couple nice pieces there. I think Connor has moving forward for the future, namely Jared Jones. But yeah, it's not really working out for him. Ready to move on to the last matchup.
Yeah, final matchup of the year. Very convincing win for Erik
Final matchup
over
of the year. Damn, we already reached the end of the season.
final matchup of the week. Yeah, Erik, pitching wasn't great, but the hitting was fantastic, and it was if he rostered closers, he would have 12 out Alex.
It's weird because I specifically remember the line I used last week was I think Eric's going to win, but I'm really excited to see this pitching matchup. And both teams just shat the bed pitching, or maybe not shitting the bed to describe Erik. It was a mediocre pitching week for him. He did get 5 quality starts out of 10. He interestingly benched 3 quality starts today. So maybe if he actually would have started a couple of those guys, I'm not really sure why he benched them. But um, I wonder if he's kind of playing for ERA and WHIP, trying to get as many categories as possible. But in any event, yeah, Alex, on the other hand, I've been really high on this pitching staff, and he got 0 quality starts this week with a 4.80 ERA and a 156 WHIP. So one of those, oof, you want to turn the page. And it's interesting because he's been having a lot of good pitching weeks, but the hitting hasn't been there. They actually didn't have that bad of a hitting week: 13 homers, 35 ribbies, 7 steals, like 331 OBP is fine. But I mean, Erik just dominated them offensively, swept the offensive categories. And they moved to Erik moves to 4-2-1. And I think for some of the concerns that we outlined for Erik early this season, I mean, they're kind of unfounded. I think we both said he was going to end up being fine, but um, yeah, big win.
Yep, big win. He had 52 RBIs, but 2/3 of those came from 5 guys. 7 from Ozuna, 8 from Teoscar Hernandez, 7 from Vinny P, 7 from Brent Rooker, and 6 from Jose Ramirez. So it was a select few guys doing the work. He also had 6 steals from Ellie De La Cruz, who didn't even have that good of a week outside of the steals. Um, so yeah, crazy there. Um,
He is legitimately, and I don't think there's too many of them, but he's legitimately someone who can flip a matchup single handedly, Ellie.
I
I mean,
mean, he really can.
he could
Uh,
single-handedly
yeah.
win you stolen bases each week. Like, I don't know how many players you can say that about.
I mean, he's on pace for over 100 this year. And
Yeah.
it's May. It's ridiculous. He's having just a super special year.
So
Yeah.
a crazy stat I heard the other day, Trey Turner, I think it was in 2021, led the league in steals. He had 32. Yeah, I mean, Ellie's gonna pass that number this month.
Ellie's gonna pass it. He's already got 25. He's gonna pass it sometime in the next couple of days, presumably. Uh,
Mhm.
it's it's insane.
I mean, if he
Um,
repeats
yeah,
this week's steals number, he'll have 31 by the end of the week.
Jesus.
Next week. I mean, that is good for Ellie. So, sorry to get us off track there, but I think you'd like any excuse to talk about Ellie De La Cruz.
I do like that. So I guess I will ground myself here a little bit by saying Erik rostered Nick Senzel for a day, and he went 0 for 3 in his lineup. Um, I don't know where that came from, but I guess Nick Senzel was rostered. Someone named Jacob Young, I had never heard of until Bleacher Report put him in their top 10 center fielders. I guess he's stealing a lot of bases. He seems like a very Erik guy. He's having a fine season, some steals and on base, although he's not hitting for power. That's a fine guy to have on your team. I have literally never heard of this guy before yesterday. Um,
Can we talk about Eric's outfield as a whole for a second? Um, he's producing, so I'm not gonna like, um, it's not like he's doing bad or anything, but it cracks me up in Eric fashion and names that he's doing this with. So Teoscar Hernandez, right? He's been having a really good season. That's his outfield one. Okay, decent enough outfield one. And then the rest of these names are like he literally has the entire Oakland A's starting outfield. Esteury Ruiz, Brent Rooker, and JJ Bleday. He
that's
has Eddie
fantastic.
Rosario, who is hitting 167 on the season, but is like heating had a hot week this week. And he has Jacob Young. And it's not like, oh, he's got like four like top outfielders on his IL or something. I mean, he's got Lane Thomas, Jason Dominguez, and Garrett Mitchell. I mean, it's just like it is a hodgepodge group of outfielders here, but in Erik fashion, you'll look at the end of the week and you're like, what the fuck? You got 18 homers and or what 17 homers and 52 ribbies and 13 steals from these clowns. Like,
Yeah, so one of those days, Brent Rooker is going to be his matchup MVP this week. He was really terrific. Even got one of the steals himself. Not a fast guy. But yeah, I think it is hilarious that he has the entire Oakland A's starting outfield. Like, what on earth?
I didn't even realize. So I looked earlier in the week and I was like, oh, this like outfield like is a bunch of shitty names. And then I didn't even realize it was all Oakland names. And that explains why they're all shitty. But I guess they're all hitting right now. So I mean, good for
Yeah,
Oakland, I guess.
good for
Uh
Oakland.
yeah, I don't get it. But hey, as long as Erik keeps winning, I mean, he's not gonna complain. The one other he's rostering Paul DeYoung too. Like and Paul DeYoung, I saw like a side by side comparison of Paul DeYoung this year to Paul Goldschmidt, and Paul DeYoung has been a better hitter this year. Like it just this is peak Erik, man. This is what Erik was doing when he was winning all those championships. Uh,
God, I don't know how he does it. Um,
no,
but yeah, 4-2-1. Yeah, in a tie with Ruthvik and with you for that fourth, fifth, fourth through six seeds.
yeah, I have the head to head over Erik. Who else is 4-2-1?
Ruthvik.
Ruthvik. Okay, I haven't played Ruthvik yet, and Erik lost to Ruthvik. No, I don't know how those tiebreakers work out, but that'll be for another day.
That will
Uh,
be for another day. Yeah. Anything else about this week's matchups?
it's also rostering John Singleton and Jose Caballero.
Okay.
Like,
Caballero
imagine.
had a good couple weeks, although he's coming down to earth.
No, no, I know. But if you told me at the beginning of the season that someone was rostering and frequently starting Jose Caballero, Paul DeJong, John Singleton, the entire Oakland outfield, and Eddie Rosario and Jacob Young, I'd be like, this is team is 0-7. And instead, this team is 4-2-1, and it's Erik. So
Upon hearing Jose Caballero, I'd be like, oh, didn't the Rays trade for him this offseason? He's probably been great, and it's probably Erik.
yeah, I mean, he's got
Did,
15 steals. That's about as Erik of a player as I could think.
yeah.
Uh, or a Yuki guy, I guess. But sorry, this is just comical. But all right, let's move on here because I could go for on this whole day.
Let's move on. Happy Toxic Week. We made it.
This yeah, I don't know if I have the heart in me this week. I've already congratulated you on your win, and I sure would be shocked if we don't pick each other to win. But yes, it is Toxic Week. Um,
Oh, I love this. I've never seen this reaction for Toxic Week from you, and I love that our rivalry has a nickname now. And I love that it's this.
yeah, do you play Britney Spears' "Toxic" as the theme song every time we play for the podcast?
I know I played it on as the podcast closing theme last year during one of our matchups.
Okay, because I was gonna say I'm surprised like that's not every Toxic Week, that is not the song. Um, Honestly, I'll probably be blaring it all day on Sunday when it's inevitably a tie game going into the day. But
Yeah. But yes, Toxic Week. I can't remember the last time I was ahead of you in the standings on Toxic Week. Um, I know I finished ahead of you in 2022, so perhaps for our matchup that year. Um, but it's not often that you're the underdog during Toxic Week.
no, you've calculated it out this week. I think I've been the number one seed 4 of the 6 seasons, second in another one, but that was when you were tanking, and then the 4 seed in 22. So um yeah, it is not often that you have a better record than me going into this. You've kind of been little brother in a lot of regards, but
A little
yeah.
bit, but little brother, sometimes steals one and sometimes thinks he's gonna steal one and then ends up looking really stupid. We're gonna see which one it is.
Yeah. Don't just want to talk about ourselves though. Let's give a shout out as well to a couple other interesting matchups. Erik versus EBO. I think this is gonna be a real big test for EBO, right? 5-2. They both really solid, but Erik is a whiz at managing. Um, I'm curious to see how this one works out for him. I also want to point out that EBO is about to lose the prospect eligibility for Shoto Imanaga and Yoshi Yamamoto. And I know they've been taking advantage of that a little bit. So I'm curious to see how that affects their managing here. And I suspect either after this coming start, if not this coming start, definitely for the next start, that each of them will have. They're not going to have that eligibility. So, and then there's one more matchup I wanted to point out.
Ruthvik versus Andrew.
Yes, Ruthvik versus Andrew. Um, the loser, if the loser, if Andrew loses, he'll be 4-4, starts 4-0, and then loses the next four. If Ruthvik loses, he'll drop to 4-3-1. Um, so there's a lot of pressure, I think, on both of these teams here to pull out a win.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Both teams got out to hot starts and have kind of been struggling a little bit since. Yeah, are we ready to pick these?
Yeah, let me pull the sheet back up. Uh, I did not calculate or pick them before recording. I suspect we did not do a good job of picking this week.
I don't
Okay,
think
you
so.
picked me to win. That was wrong. I picked EBO to win. You were gonna pick EBO to win, but you wanted to be different from me. That didn't work out for you. You lost that. You beat Connor. Erik beat Alex and Zach. We both picked that. We both picked Andrew to beat Yuki. That didn't pan out. Still can't believe it. And then we both picked Ruthvik to beat Daniel and Matt, and that one almost didn't look good. So I won 4-2 on the week. You won 3-3 on the week. That pushes me up to 25, 10, and 7. You are 24, 12, and 6. That means I am in the pick'em lead still, and that means I get to pick first. All right.
All
Um,
right. And in the meantime, uh your last time losing double digit categories was to me week 17 of 2021.
Holy shit. So I went over 2 years without losing double digit categories.
You went over 2 years without losing double digit categories, and looks like that was the only time you've ever done it.
Seriously? That's the
Yeah, this
only
is
time I've ever lost double digit. This is like shit.
yeah, this is number two.
I'll have to post that in chat. That's wild. Jesus. Okay. Shows you how good I've played overall. But all right. Let's pick these matchups. I'm gonna pick Jake to beat Conor. I know Jake's struggling right now, but it's Conor. I'm gonna pick Anthony to beat Daniel and Matt. The rest of these are really tricky. Like they're all relatively even matchups. In a lot of regards. I'm gonna I'm gonna take Yuki to beat Alex and Zach. I know Yuki tends to play down to his opponents, but like I don't know. I trust Yuki a little more right now. I think Andrew versus Ruthvik is a tough one. If I think if Andrew had beaten Yuki this week, I think I would have had a much different impression here, and I would have been like, of course, Andrew's gonna roll here. I feel less confident about that. Maybe undeservedly so. I feel like teams are gonna have a tough loss like that each year, but I mean, I can't justify picking Ruthvik after a week he had. I'm gonna pick Andrew. EBO and Erik. These are oh, this one's tough too. Eric's got it's like a couple two starts. Zane. Oh, does have Yamamoto and Imanaga with two start weeks this week. Okay, so they are going to lose eligibility this week. I'm going to take Erik though. The Oakland A's outfield magic. I don't know. And I'm gonna reverse what I said. I'm gonna pick myself to beat you. I think I'll get back on track.
Interesting. All right. Let's look at these matchups. I think Jake bounces back against Connor. I think Anthony beats the Drury. I think, as weird as Yuki's team is, I can't see him winning 2 games in a row. I'm going to take Alex in that one. Um, I think Andrew will bounce back against Ruthvik. And yeah, I buy the Erik magic. I think Erik will beat EBO. And as for me versus you, I was prepared to pick you until you picked yourself, so I'm going to pick me now.
Fun.
Cool.
Let's look back here quickly. I wonder how many times when you and I played each other that we have both picked we picked ourselves. 2022 you and I played week 4. I picked you, you picked me, I won. We played week wasn't that Second matchup that year is not pulling up for some reason. Let's see if I could just scroll and find it. Oh, okay, that's why. We mistyped it. We played week 14 that season as well. Same thing. You picked me, I picked you. I won that matchup. We did not play again that year. In 2023, same thing. You picked me, I picked you. Um, and I won that matchup. And then we both picked me week 19 of last year. In fact, we both picked me to win 12-0 because I had won the previous 2 weeks 12-0. And I did end up winning that matchup.
That's right. That was one where I led on Sunday and I led briefly on Sunday and you kind of took over towards the end of the day.
Sounds about right. So this is the first time that I'm picking myself and you're picking yourself. In fact, this is the first time you have picked yourself to beat me ever.
Wow. How about that?
Yeah. Damn, this you trade Jarred Kelenic and all of a sudden you get bold.
I'm feeling bold. I don't know.
This is a whole new side of you that I'm not used to. I'm a little scared almost.
You are. Yeah, maybe you should be.
Yeah, I don't even feel like I know you anymore. But
Right. Well, maybe I've turned into a person who can beat you.
oh my God, that would be terrifying. All right. Anything else before we wrap up the beginning of Toxic Week?
Lastly, I guess speaking of pick'ems, I just put this in the chat, but in the preseason pick'em game, everyone had to pick one matchup prior to the season to tie, and Anthony chose week 7, Andrew v. Yuki as his tie of the season. And
Oh
it
no.
almost came true, and that was worth 10 points, so that could have put him in a very good position.
That does remind me. I think I lost the belt this week, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
did you lose the belt?
I think I did.
That would be uh that would be exciting. And that's a shame that our matchup is not a belt matchup. And yes, Anthony now owns the belt for the first time since last June. So congrats on that. Yuki, meanwhile, gives the loser's belt to Andrew.
There you go. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say unless you have anything else.
No, that's everything. Yeah, thanks for listening, and we will see you after a very toxic week 8.
Now you say you don't believe it. Well, you can take it or leave it. Who are these guys? They're the Oakland A's. Beyond logic or all reason, they keep going to the postseason. Who are these guys? They're the Oakland A's.
This podcast is good.